Prime Video released their new series We Were Liars, which is based on Lockhart's book We Were Liars, which was very, very popular on TikTok and also had a huge following in a lot of popularity back when it first came out. When it comes to the series though, some people love it or hate it. I personally wasn't really a big fan for a couple of reasons. In the book, the ending I feel like is such a punch in the gut because it all just comes together so quickly, and you realize that all these moments that Katie had with Mirren, Gat, and Johnny were simply in her head, that they never existed in the present in the first place. There's a final goodbye between her and the three other liars where they bid their farewells and then they swim into the ocean, going off in the distance, never to return. And it really does hit you with this feeling of loneliness and emptiness, knowing that these characters will never come back. In the series, however, the goodbyes are done individually, and not only are they done individually, but the moment where the characters disappear and we never see them again happens quite abruptly. There isn't actually a moment of a goodbye. They cannonball into the waters and then Katie comes out herself without the other three liars. And for me, this didn't really give the same emphasis that it had in the book, that the liars are gone, that they're no longer here. And I really missed that part. I really missed Katie coming to terms with what happened, coming to terms with the result of her own actions, and having to bid that farewell to her cousins and Gat that she never got to. One thing about this series that I really disliked is what they did with Gat's character. Like, I was not feeling the way they wrote out Gat's character. Gat is the only Indian boy on the island, and in the book what really stands out about Gat is he's very intelligent. Compared to the rest of the liars, he is a lot more intellectual, and some of that comes from him just being naturally a smart and clever kid, but a lot of that also comes from him being a person of color, growing up with these wealthy people who he cannot relate to, and realizing the reality of how he fits within these contexts, and coming to understand how differently Katie's grandfather and grandmother treat him because he's the only Indian on the island. I'm not saying that Gat didn't have a huge crush on Katie in the book. He absolutely did. He had hella feelings for her, and they had their moments in the book. But in the series, they made such an emphasis on how much Gat loves Katie. And I'm over this trope of a POC character loving a white person so much that they're willing to go up against any disrespect, any racism, and any challenges that come their way, and they're willing to put aside their own well-being just to be with this person. I'm not saying that isn't a reality for many people, and I'm not saying it isn't admirable that somebody would go against the odds to be with the person that they love. But Gat is a teenager, and I understand that them being so young obviously means that their relationship is based off of a lot of passion, but I couldn't get around how passionate they made Gat in this series. He literally gives up a scholarship to be with Katie, and I know it's because he realized that the scholarship wasn't actually given to him from kindness, but rather to get him off the island, and he was going to prove a point by going back to the island. But it's also very clear that he gave up this opportunity to be with Katie. Even in the conversation that he's having with his mom, and his mom points out to him that he is very different from the rest of the liars. He tells his mom that he doesn't care because he wants to be wherever Katie is. I don't find that cute, and I actually find this repetitive storyline very, very harmful because that just isn't fair. Gat having to put everything aside in his life to be with Katie just minimizes him to Katie's lover when he's so much more. He can definitely grapple with the fact that he loves Katie, but it isn't easy to be with her because she's a Sinclair. But I would have loved to see him be more of an individual, of somebody who's having those frustrations and having those difficulties, than to just ultimately want to be with Katie and nothing more. And before you all say that in the beginning of the series he was really struggling with that and that he was pushing Katie off because of this reality, I'm aware of that. But I'm saying when he made that jump and decided that he really did love Katie and wanted to be with her, that's all he cared about. And there's just so much more to that storyline, and it got oversimplified to just Gat realizes that he loves Katie and will do anything to be with her. Another difference in the series from the book that I didn't actually think worked in its favor is how the fire in the house actually took off. Because in the book, Katie's plan is that each of the liars will take a different floor, coat it in gas, and then Katie will set the ground floor on fire. And of course, slowly the top floor and the basement will all burn down as well. And it's more clear in the book that the liars dying is ultimately her fault because she lit the fire way too soon before ensuring that everybody else in the house was already out. She got way too carried away with her feelings and her emotions and doing her part of the ground floor, that without making sure that nobody was still in the crib, she just set it on fire and ran out. But in the series, they don't emphasize that that's what happened, that was the mistake that happened. It just seems like everything went to plan. The house got set on fire, but Johnny, Mirren, and Gat didn't get out in time. And also, Gat was never waiting at the shore for them. He was also in the house. And I don't appreciate, again, that they had him on the dock. And the reason why he dies is because he runs into the house chasing Katie, putting his life in danger and ultimately passing away trying to save her. I feel like it would have made more sense if they just kept that part of the story exactly how it was in the book, because it adds up better. This whole idea to set the house on fire is ridiculous. And that is something that I can go about forever, because of course rich kids would think that setting a house on fire will just somehow make their moms and their grandfather realize that they're wrong and that their actions are so inhumane and change. Like, of course that's not going to happen, but they felt so empowered to be so destructive because they're never going to face any consequences for their actions anyways. And finally, one last thing that I wish the show had done better is give us the clues that something is really off about the reality that Katie is living in. It is more interesting to watch a show and kind of start to pick up that something is wrong, but you can't place your finger on it. And in the book, there's these tiny clues that we get along the way that indicates that something is really wrong with Katie's memory and that something really awful happened in summer 17 that left things changed forever. But in the series, we don't get those same clues and hints. For example, in the book, the mothers have moments where they're having these reactions to things that Katie can't understand, but at the end of the book, when we find out the twist, it all starts to make sense. For example, Johnny's mother is crying holding his jacket in the book, and Katie doesn't understand why she's doing that. But of course, in the end of the book, you realize it's because she's grieving her son. In the series, we don't really see the mothers grieve so much. They're more so coming to terms with what's happened and learning to live with it. But given that it's only been a year in the series since the incident happened, they should be a lot more impacted. Katie is still clearly suffering to even remember what had happened, so it only makes sense that the mothers are still grieving and grieving heavily. Yes, there's a moment where Johnny's mom takes his phone back from Katie and has a breakdown, but that breakdown seems more like she had a breakdown because she's remembering the awful act that he did rather than grieving the son that she had and no longer does. There was a lot more opportunity to indicate that the mothers are really going through a lot. And finally, I was not a fan of the series ending on Carrie still being able to see Johnny's ghost and him not being able to leave because he's witnessing his mom relapse on her addiction. And this again is because the story is from Katie's perspective, and it was very enjoyable from Katie's perspective because she's an unreliable narrator. We don't really understand what's going on because she's so confused. It again felt more powerful to me that the liars just had to leave because they're no longer alive. It also left more interpretation to the audience. Are they ghosts that are actually on the island, or are they simply just Katie's imagination? But because Johnny still exists and he's interacting with his mother, it breaks that ambiguity and doesn't completely close the story the way it does in the book, the way I felt was most powerful. Ultimately, I feel like the series ended with not much left for us to hold on to. In the book, Katie's whole revelation from remembering what happened in summer 17 is that there is nothing that she can do to bring her liars back, but all that she can carry on with is trying to be better towards her family members who are still alive. And that's what the rest of the Sinclairs are left with as well. But in the series, Katie doesn't seem to have that same understanding. She wants to leave behind her grandfather's legacy and doesn't want to have the Sinclair name attached to her, given how toxic her upbringing was, simply because she came from a very wealthy family with a grandfather who cared more about how he appeared versus actually raising a happy, healthy family. But her throwing away these pearls, supposedly being a symbolic moment where she comes to realize that she doesn't want to be a part of this family name anymore, wasn't as effective to me as her actually coming to some kind of understanding that the best that she could do going forward is to just be the best person she can possibly be. This is a side note that I forgot to mention, but I personally didn't find the acting very strong in this show either, especially from our two leads. The actors who played Mirren and Johnny were actually really strong. I liked their performances. I thought they did a great job. But unfortunately for me, our actors who played Katie and who played Gat, it was just too on the nose. A lot of their facial expressions were way too dramatic. It gave theater versus natural screen acting, and so I thought there was a lot of room for improvement. I know that Shubham, who is the actor who plays Gat, that this is his first ever role, so of course there's like lots of room for improvement and lots of experience that he's hopefully going to get down the line. The actor who plays Katie, I think she's not new to the game, but she also is like, this is one of her bigger roles. But in this series, the performances weren't really doing it for me, and I feel like both actors definitely have a lot of room for improvement that I look forward to seeing in the future. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on the show or on the book. If you watched the show and you read the book, I'd be so curious to hear your thoughts. Is there some stuff that you agree with? Is there some points I made that you definitely don't agree with? I know it's a little bit of a mix of two reactions that we're getting. And if you have not subscribed already, what is he doing, bruv? Get to it. And as always, I will see you guys on my next video. Bye.